Isn't this beautiful? This is absolutely beautiful. Welcome. Welcome, guys. You're looking at the Intracoastal. Hi, Uplifting Works. Hi. Thank you guys for joining me. This is the Intracoastal. Just a few blocks from where I live. And this place has significant meaning to me. I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. And the sun's going down. Hello, Kim. Thank you so much for joining me. This is my second scope of the day. I am doing my Periscope challenge. Anya Khalees. She put it out there and asked everyone to do two scopes a day. So, you know what? I've been off the grid for a couple of days, and I thought this would be good for me because there's so much on my heart and mind that I want to be able to share. And I wanted to share this space with you, too, because one of the last times I was on the beach, I shared a little bit about my story and how I got to this small beach town where I live in Florida. And this Intracoastal space right here, this is the place that I came when I was homeless and I didn't know what was going to happen in my life. I would sit here in my car and just cry and call out to God and just talk to God. I write about this in my book, Who the Hell Do You Think You Are? And, you know, I share the time and the experience and what this meant for me. It was so therapeutic, but little did I know at the time that I was sitting here in my car looking out at this beautiful view that I would be moving just a few blocks from here. And it's just, it's all God. Thank you. Thank you so much for following me. I really appreciate you joining me today. And, you know, and in my story, you know, I talk about what my ex-husband did to me. And for those of you that don't know just a little bit, he had me arrested in front of my two children, and when I was released from jail, he emptied the bank accounts and left me homeless and penniless. I was a stay-at-home mom, upper middle class, staying at home with my 6-year-old daughter and my 18-year-old daughter. And anyway, my life just changed in 24 hours. And so, again, I write about that in my book. But I sat out here and just trying to reconcile what happened to my life. And, you know, people talk about forgiveness, and that's what this is about. It's to forgive or not to forgive. And quite honestly, it's not even a question of not forgiving. Forgiveness is important. Forgiveness is a part of the healing process. And I think the bigger question is sometimes when we have been hurt by someone, depending on the circumstances, is it more difficult to forgive them than it is to forgive ourselves? And I had to come to that realization that, and you know, please, you know, interject here if you understand what I'm talking about. Give me some hearts or let me know if you're dealing with something right now in your life, if you're holding on maybe to some unforgiveness and you're not quite sure how to, you know, how to get rid of that. And so I had to do some soul searching. And yes, I was deeply hurt by what he did to me. You know, this was the man that I loved and I thought loved me. And we did share a love. However, something went terribly wrong. And, well, abuse is what happened. But so I had to start looking at myself and looking at and taking responsibility in my part for this. And that's really hard. And that's another touchy subject when it comes to domestic abuse, about your personal responsibility and all of that. But I did that. And I did it very early on. And one of the things that I did was, even within a month of all of this happening, I sat down and I wrote a forgiveness letter. Now, did I mean it? No. I didn't mean a word of it, but I wrote it. And I wrote it from a place of where I wanted to be. And I knew I would never give him that letter, but I did that because I needed to bring that up for myself, because I felt myself going into a very dark place. And one thing about us, when we experience abuse and we experience trauma and the stress that it can cause, it can take you to a dark place. You become depressed. You become, very much into yourself and in a corner. And it is. It's very powerful experience. But we have to be able to come to ourselves, to be able to uplift ourselves out of that. We have to be able to sometimes be on the outside look. Hi, Anya. Thank you so much for joining. So we're talking about a very heavy subject here. And, and I know there's a lot of people out there holding on to unforgiveness. And so I just want to share a little bit of what I did and what was helpful for me. So I wrote that letter, and I thanked him for the experience and for our child and for all of that. And I folded it up and I put it in an envelope, and I never did anything with it. But from that very moment, what I started doing after that as well was I started journaling more and more, because I found that the writing therapy was good for me. It brought up things for me that my head, if I just sat in my stuff, I would not have gone there. So the writing therapy really helped me when it was time to look at forgiveness and then look at my role in it. Like I was telling you before, it's starting to get dark now. But I wanted to look at where I went wrong, what I missed, the things that I did. So I looked at the very beginning before I even married this man, and I said, you know what, you saw the signs. They were clearly there. You ignored them. However, I ignored them because I didn't know any better. And I always say knowledge is key. So when you know better, you do better. And I also believe that what you don't know can hurt you. And so I didn't realize that his behavior was abusive. So now that I can go back and look at that, I can't be hard on myself. That's what it was. And that's where I was. And that experience put me in a place where I now can grow and learn from. So when I got there and I learned, okay, I've got to learn to love myself. Okay, mistakes and all. That's self-love. I had to start there. Then I can go into the healing part, and that's the self-healing. And I teach these three things: self-love, self-healing, and self-care. So all of that goes into hi, thank you for joining me. All of that, my battery's going low. All of that is going into the forgiveness process. Now, we had a very deep discussion about this last week on Twitter on the domestic violence chat. And that's happening tonight, in fact, at 9 o'clock, if any of you want to join us. When we were talking about forgiveness, and there are a lot of people that believe that, someone that hurt them very badly, they're not going to forgive them. They don't deserve forgiveness. But what I think, even besides that, is you deserve to live in peace and harmony and balance. And you cannot do that. Hi, Go-To Kitchens. Thank you for joining me. You cannot do that if you're holding on to bitterness and anger. So how do you know you haven't forgiven someone? Well, if you keep thinking back at what someone has done to you, and all of a sudden you're feeling this, bitterness towards them, you feel that stuff and you're holding on to that, or you're even talking about them or that situation with still this resentment towards them, then you haven't forgiven. Now, just because people say, well, the Bible says you have to forgive. Yes, I understand that. I believe that is very important. But go easy on yourself. It's a process. You don't have to forgive right away. Okay? You just take your time with that. So when you have forgiven, you know that you have clearly let it go. I think about it like this. It's like carrying around a balloon with helium, but there's not only helium in this balloon, there are all these rocks and dirt. And you're walking around carrying this balloon. Release it. Let it go. And float off into the air, wherever it needs to go. Release it. And that's what I tell people. Even if you don't want to look at it as forgiveness, think of it this way. You're releasing that emotional baggage. You're releasing that person and what they've done from having any more hold on your life anymore. You're releasing that situation and you're letting it go to God. You have got to look at yourself and you've got to take care of self first. And you've got to reclaim your life back. And if you can do this, if you can find a way to do this process over and over again, because people will hurt us. You know what was big for me was that was the first time in my life at 40 years old that I had ever experienced like trauma, and I had ever I looked at life so differently. And it took me a long time because I couldn't understand how someone could do something like that to someone else. My mind couldn't rationalize it. I thought this is for the movies, but these are the things that movies are made of. So, we go through life and we're not prepared for some of the devastating things that people will do to us. But what we have to be prepared for is how we will overcome them. So I had to become a thriver. I didn't want to be anyone's victim anymore. I'm a thriver. And just recently someone has hurt me in my family very deeply, but that's what it is. Now I can see Periscope is starting to flick out, and so I know what that means. So that means it's time for me to wrap up, because every time I do this and I get in the flow, Periscope goes out on me. But listen, I want to tell you guys, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to tell you guys to join me again tomorrow morning, because if you would like to spend a weekend in Florida with no cost involved, beautiful location overlooking the ocean with me, I invite you to come and join me tomorrow morning. I have a very special announcement I'd like to share with you and how you can experience a weekend retreat for free with me. So, as always, thank you so much for joining me again. Tag Tribes, if anyone from Tag Tribes is out there, shout out to you all. I love that group. If you're not a part of Tag Tribes, look for us on Facebook. And go out and change the world. Okay? See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.